Welcome to We Are InsurTech Women, and welcome to Melissa Collett, CEO of InsurTech UK. Thanks for joining us, Melissa.
Lovely to be here, Charlotte.
Well, this is a great and a really easy conversation for me because obviously we know each other really well. But perhaps for those of us that don't, and they don't know your career so well. I mean, it's 25 years across insurance, Financial Ombudsman, Fairer Finance, the CII, law firm before that, and InsurTech UK's first ever CEO. So what's the thread, would you say, connecting all of those roles, and what pulled you to InsurTech specifically?
Yeah, I suppose the connecting thread, first of all, is insurance.
Yeah, it's a good one to start with.
Although I would say sometimes I say my career has been insurance adjacent because apart from secondments, when I was much younger, I haven't worked inside of an insurance company, but I've worked with insurance companies and insurance brokers for my entire career. So a bit like you, and in the sense of I started my career in law as well, but as an insurance lawyer. So you're just constantly thinking about working with insurance. So that's the sort of obvious thread. But I think for me, the thread that connects all my roles is that trying to improve outcomes for customers. And I feel like all the way through, there's been my motivation and what's really kept me engaged in insurance and wanting to change things. And the role I have now really gives me that great opportunity to try and shake things up with tech to make things better for people. And when I say customers, I mean it in the widest sense. So consumers, retail customers, but also, people in business who are trying to get decent insurance cover, making it easier for them, more responsive to their needs.
Yeah.
That's what we all want.
Yeah, definitely. And, being the first CEO of an organisation like InsurTech UK, there's no cookie cutter, there's no job spec almost, actually, in some ways. So, what was that like, having a totally blank sheet of paper and building that from scratch?
Exciting.
Yeah.
Daunting a little bit, but definitely up for the challenge. I actually had, in the role I had previously, I was also the first in that particular role,
Right.
which was to be executive director of professional standards at the CII. So no one had ever held that before. I had to build that from the ground up. So I did have some experience in building a role that didn't exist before. But it is still been quite a whirlwind of a journey.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun along the way. And I think I really do like creating my own role and creating something. I think it's brought out all the creative juices as that I've had over the years. As you can relate as a lawyer, it's sometimes hard to be very creative in law back in the day. But now it's been a chance over the past sort of nearly 3 years in the role to get really creative and make it into something that is, I hope, will be a role and an organization for the long term.
Yeah, it is really interesting because quite a few of the conversations that we've been having throughout this series is really about, okay, we're in the business of risk in lots of different ways. But actually, does that mean you're conservative and risk averse? A lot like, being a lawyer in some ways, can be a bit rigid. Or do you take another view and actually become more solutions driven and recognize that there's not an answer? So I think InsurTech in particular lends itself to that much more because people are often trying to find a fit for something that hasn't been done in that way before, or it's a entirely new product. And yeah, certainly from the advisory angle that I sit in, forcing you to get comfortable with not knowing the answers and actually saying yes or okay, not that way, but this way, definitely is quite refreshing being in the InsurTech environment. So I can imagine, the similarity that you have in terms of having that blank piece of paper almost is really fun and exciting. And do you think that really makes you have empathy with founders, because they're often starting from scratch, you know, even if somebody has done it before, they haven't done it in the way that that particular founder might want to, for example. You know, does that bring something to your role as CEO that you think is useful?
100%, 100%. And my board actually challenges me all the time, you know, and says, well, you're like a founder, you're like us. So, you know, kind of get on with it.
Yeah.
It really does give me a sort of insight into what it's like. You know, it can be lonely at the top, but also it's a chance to innovate, and it's a chance to take risks. And it's very rewarding when it works out. And you build something, and you build a team, because nobody can do this stuff alone. So how you build a team is critical to success. You know, so bringing on the right people and all the buzz that comes with, you know, a group of people that are all pulling in the same direction. They all want to build, in this particular case, InsurTech UK, you know, into something bigger and better. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. Makes the long nights and the trips and the lots of FaceTime that you have to have worthwhile.
Definitely.
And look, you know, we're obviously on the We Are InsurTech Women podcast. One of the things that we're really trying to do this series is obviously highlight females in the space, but not just because they're females in a leadership role, because they are actually great leaders. So the conversations that we're having are really much more about, yes, this is for women, but it's not just for women. You know, this is a conversation that we hope everyone will be interested in. And, you know, you've said in the past that InsurTech's doing pretty well on that kind of gender parity being, you know, one diversity angle that we're kind of all trying to contribute to in our own way. And it's good at membership level, but you've also flagged kind of pipeline progression. What does that look like underneath the headline? And how does that gap show up in practice from what you're seeing at the moment?
So I think that I like being in an innovative space, full of innovative people. And there's been loads of innovative women as part of that space. So that's been really fun. And, you know, InsurTech UK, one of our principal partners is McKinsey & Co., which are famous for producing, you know, fantastic reports. And we produced a report with them a couple of years ago, which was sort of looking at all aspects of InsurTech in the UK and produced key stats. One of my favorite stats is that the UK is number one in the world for InsurTechs per capita.
Wow, yeah.
So great. That really shows you the strength of the UK InsurTech sector. But one of the other stats that came out in the report is looking at, you know, who is in InsurTech, how diverse is it from a gender perspective, and it was the case that it's more. There's more gender parity in InsurTech than in traditional insurance. So that's a positive. I think that, you know, there are some other stats which need a lot. We know the sector needs more work to create that parity. And I can share a few of those stats with you today because we recently launched this week our Women in InsurTech series.
Great.
So we like this podcast, we've actually done a series of interviews with some of our members who are female founders, and we are publishing them every day this week, and they'll be on our website. And the purpose of it is to really encourage women in the sector, maybe thinking of joining the sector, into, you know, encouraging them just to succeed and shouting about the ones who have succeeded thus far. So we're really keen to promote that. And I'd like to think that this podcast is sort of a part of that. And I don't want to dwell on the negatives today, but I will share a couple of stats, which do concern me, which are that 80% of equity investment in the UK is directed to teams without any female founders. So that says something about, the current state of investment. And in AI, where obviously everyone's trying to invest in AI these days, only 7% of the founders are women. So again, that's a stat that is, that's clearly not showing that there's gender parity there. And the average deal for male-led AI startups in the past year was 5.3 million. Versus female-led AI firms was just 800,000.
Well, it's quite a big difference.
So a big disparity there. So these are some of the stats. They're on our website, and this is there's a clear gap there, which is why are we doing a whole series on women in InsurTech? Well,
why is it still important?
Because of this gap. So we're hoping this goes some small way to kind of closing that gap or kind of highlighting the issue to be addressed.
And it's interesting and important because, some of the conversation that we've been having on this podcast series is around, well, why are we still having this conversation? Is it still important? And it can feel quite staid almost in some ways, but I think those stats just do show that it is still important to keep talking. And even if it's in the small ways, it's not just about female representation, it's about celebrating great leaders, whatever they bring to the table and whatever makeup they have in reality. And I also think it's partly around dispelling some of the myths that might be attributed to male leadership styles, for example. And I think that's as equally important, because if we look at the bigger societal points around encouraging female leadership, diverse leadership, because we know it's better for business, and actually we know that it's better for society in general, and actually if it's more reflective of our customer base, then that's got to be a good thing as well, right? Having that conversation around, men, for example, might want to take more time out of work, and do they feel like they can have it in the current model that we have in the UK and in other kind of nations where InsurTech and insurance is a really prominent part of the sector. So is there anything that you've seen on the positive side on that front in terms of movements to more females in leadership role, or men being more open about what they want from their role, which actually will be beneficial to men and women and everybody in society?
Yeah, a lot of questions to unpack there.
Yeah.
I think that the McKinsey research, it's actually called what is it called? The United Kingdom InsurTech sector. It can be found online and also on our website. And the research also showed that the InsurTech sector is younger on average than traditional insurance. So it's younger, it's also more international, it's more female. So for me, that means that, this is the future, and that, the future is going to look brighter for women and start to close that gap. I think that when you are working in a sector where people are business owners and founders, they create their own rules, which allows them greater flexibility, male or female, in terms of, balancing their responsibilities. So I think that's going to create the opportunity to kind of share the domestic burden more than in traditional roles where, you and I remember back in the day, you had to be in the office 9 to 5 or longer. And, that was 5 days a week. Now everyone is much more flexible. And most InsurTech companies are virtual. There's no office. So, by nature, you're working remotely. So I think I'm positive about the future and the growth potential there, and the future potential for more female-led companies and female leaders. They don't necessarily have to be a founder to be a leader in a company. If they're the CTO or, the CFO or another sort of chief role, I think that they're, part of the leadership team. And I think InsurTech as a sector gives them more opportunity to do so. I'm really excited by the female leaders that I meet.
Yeah.
Because I think if we want to bring up that pipeline of female leaders in the future, we need role models. And that's something that came out in all the interviews that we did with the founders in our series, which was the importance of role models. So I think that in InsurTech, we have a lot of them. We're fortunate. And so I think, again, for that reason, there's women can aspire to be like, I'll mention some of our series members. We've got Katja Kinane. She's co-founder of Nettle. We have Louisa Barilla. She's CEO of Many Pets, which is a huge company. And we also have Louise Birateri, CEO of Pickle. And she is also the founder. And, we've got one more as well. And I will come back to you on that.
Yeah, that's fine. We can edit it in. That's absolutely fine. And that's great to...
Oh, I remember now. Joanne Sappho, and she's co-founder of Lucango.
It's great.
So we've got, all of those and they're all incredible women. A lot of fun.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing, I think, isn't it? Like, take your job seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously is how I kind of try and approach things. So, we do serious jobs. We work in very heavily regulated environments. It's important to kind of maintain that fun and that levity and having those really great relationships that you develop with your peers, with your mentors or with your mentees, once you get to that kind of leadership stage. It's great to see. And it's great to hear that InsurTech UK and it's kind of, as an organisation and the members, it's doing well in that sense. So it's great to have those McKinsey stats. Yes, stuff to improve on, but good, positive noises coming from that, definitely.
Oh, we want more female founders. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason for launching the series as well. We want more to come out of the woodwork to join us. I mean, the names you mentioned to me before the podcast, people you've interviewed as part of this series is an amazing list. So we'd love to have them on board, have their interviews published. And, the more the merrier.
Yeah, definitely. And, you mentioned a little earlier kind of different ways of working, when you first started out and when I first started out, it was a very different time in some ways. But even kind of back then when you were just starting out in your career and you were still in private practice as a lawyer, are there any standout allies that you remember, like, yeah, they really opened that door for me, or they really provided me with some great insight and kind of gave me that hand up that I will always remember?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this. I mean, I think Sean Fisher was a big role model for me and an ally. And I think you used the word sponsor when we were discussing this. So she recruited me into the CII to be part of her executive team. And I was the only female in her executive team. I think there were sort of 8 of us, and it was just her at the top and me on the team with this room full of men. And I just remember thinking, well, we're kind of in this together now. She's got a buddy.
Yeah.
And so it was very formative. And what was great about having Sean, in my corner is that she introduced me to so many women around the city who she had worked with over the years, and to help me broaden my network. And And I've broadened it so much thanks to her introductions. You know, and I've met some incredible women, you know, working right across the city, people who I now count as friends.
Yeah.
And so it was really a really good time and a really good person to work with.
That's great. And you know, in your role as CEO now, you obviously spend a lot of your time utilising that network for the benefit of InsurTech UK. You know, the fact that you've launched the Women in InsurTech Hub is obviously an example of a commitment to that kind of diversity angle. But how do you know, in your practical experience, how do you bring these conversations up around diversity without it looking like a lecture, you know, trying to stay curious and encouraging people to come along with you with those type of things? Do you find it difficult? Do you get shut down, or is it usually a pretty open and easy conversation these days?
Well, I think that when you're leading a membership association and you're trying to bring to the association opportunities, insights, broad networks, then obviously you want as much variety in there as possible. And if I have a room full of insurtechs wanting to pitch and they're all men, you know, that's just not enough variety for the audience. So I'm always trying to bring variety to the mix. Gender is one part of the picture. There are other aspects of that variety, just to create that, you know, that network, that broad network where people can find those opportunities and hear different points of view.
Because it's still about business, you know, ultimately. Like, we want the diversity of thought to make business better. And obviously, if that means businesses are going to grow, it's going to be better for everybody. It's better for the economy. It's better for the UK platform in the InsurTech space. So it's great that you're kind of doing that and continuing to fly that flag with InsurTech UK. You know, and we touched, you know, a couple of times on the Women in InsurTech Hub. What does success look like for that part of InsurTech UK in a year from now, for example?
Yeah, again, I was thinking about, you know, what are the success measures? I think definitely having more in the series. You know, let's double it, let's triple it, let's make it bigger and better. And let's get it out there. I'd like to, you know, expand and collaborate with you and this podcast and make a noise.
Yeah, sounds great. And, you know, just one final question, I think, from me. If you know, have a young person starting out in their career and they're toying with the idea of a foray into InsurTech, you know, whether it be as a founder or kind of more of an entry level, and they kind of want to work their way through the ranks, what advice would you give to them, you know, particularly if they're female, but in any event, you know, if it's a young person starting out, what would you say to them?
I have learned a lot of lessons over the years, as I'm sure you have.
Yeah, just
Hard
a few
lessons. I think, you know, and I've got 2 kids entering the world of work, so I'm constantly doling out advice.
Yeah.
Whether anyone listens is another thing. But they, you know, what I say to them is, you know, focus on your networks. Your network, you'll get your next job through your network. Networking is critical to career progression. And in terms of, you know, setting up a company, for me, when I was starting out my career, it was like such a daunting idea to do that. Now I think, why wouldn't you want to do that when you're younger and you have fewer domestic responsibilities? You can take more risks. It's like when people go traveling when they're young.
Yeah.
You know, they've got the time to kind of do that, maybe make, you know, spend some time doing different things, make some mistakes. That's what you can do with setting up a sort of new company based on your own idea. You'll learn so much doing that.
And would you...
And gain confidence.
Yeah.
And that's a key thing, I think, talking about, you know, for women in their careers. Again, another theme going through the interviews is like, the need to build your confidence to take those leadership roles. And everyone would have to do that, male or female.
Yeah.
So running your own business, that's certainly going to give you a lot of confidence later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be my best advice.
That's great. And even for those, because obviously not everybody that comes into the insurance space has that ready-made network. They don't necessarily have the contacts that are already there. But would you agree that actually, even if you're not from insurance and you don't have anybody in your friends or family network that are in the space, do it anyway? Come to Lloyd's, come and find out what it's all about. Make some new connections on LinkedIn or whatever platform you are going to use. Do you think that's possible for young people to be able to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whatever career they go into, they're going to be new. They're not going to have connections. I mean, you'd be lucky if you had family connections into your chosen career. So I would say go for it and hone your networking skills, because they'll just take you where you want to go. And I see in InsurTech UK lots of companies where there's no insurance background, but there are people with tech backgrounds, entrepreneurial backgrounds, and they see insurance as a great market to enter. So they just dip their toe in the water and they use InsurTech UK to help them make those connections. So it's definitely doable.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for coming in. It's always lovely to chat to you, Melissa. So thanks for taking the time. I've had a great time and I hope you have too.
Thanks, Charlotte. It's been really good fun.